Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Edward Wu, Georgetown College, class of 2022.
Hello. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's forum event hosted by the Institute of Politics and Public Service at the McCourt School of Public Policy, known by many of you as GU Politics. Tonight, we are joined by Fall 2021 GU Politics Fellow, Rebecca Piercy, who will be serving as today's moderator for tonight's discussion, and the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. My name is Edward Wu, and I'm a senior in the college from St. Louis, Missouri. Since the first semester of my freshman year, I've been involved with GU Politics, primarily through the Fellows Program. This past semester, I've had the absolute privilege and honor to work with Rebecca as her student strategy team lead. Her depth of knowledge and open candidness in discussion group and office hours has made this truly an unforgettable semester for me and many other students. In fact, I asked Rebecca for advice on this speech, and what she told me was, I don't know, dude, why don't you talk about why you're excited or something? And so here's why. When the pandemic hit, I took a gap year and ended up working on a couple of campaigns as an organizer. To be honest, I struggled with a lot of the aspects of my job and the pressures that came with it. But what kept me going was knowing that I was working for a movement that, if successful, would enact positive, meaningful change for Americans across this country during an unprecedented time. That's why tonight, I'm excited to hear from two expert policymakers about the policy response to the pandemic and where we go from here. Rebecca Piercy is one of the most respected political operatives in the country. During her 20-year career, she has steered hundreds of campaigns across the United States, including a stint at both the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee and the DCCC, along with Senator Warren's 2020 presidential campaign. Sorry, a little bit of a Freudian slip. As a Fall 2021 GU Politics Fellow, Rebecca leads a discussion group called Political Science to Political Directing to Political Power, a Practical Approach, which offers students an inside look at how public policy moves through a political process. Elizabeth Warren, a consumer advocate who has made it her life's work, the fight for middle-class families, was elected to the United States Senate on November 6, 2012 by the people of Massachusetts. Senator Warren is recognized as one of the nation's top experts on bankruptcy and the financial pressures facing middle-class families. Tonight, our conversation with Senator Warren will focus on leveling the playing field. This event is being co-sponsored by the Georgetown University College Democrats and the Georgetown University Progressive Alliance. Please join the conversation on social media by tagging GU Politics using @GUPolitics and the official event hashtag #Warren@GU. Now, I'd like to welcome to the stage Rebecca Piercy and Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Wow, I've missed you all. Oh, this is going to be fun.
So we're 6 feet apart, so we're going to take our masks off.
Okay.
But you guys should leave yours on. Got it? Welcome, Senator. Thank you for being here. This is amazing. It's our first big event back in Gaston in over almost 2 years.
Yeah,
over 2
3
years,
lifetimes.
Yeah, it does feel like it. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Senate right now. We will be here all night, but yes, what is going on in the Senate right now?
The short version is we have a to-do list. And the to-do list is don't shut down the government. And I'm serious. It means we need a continuing resolution by Friday. The to-do list is don't default on America's debt. And that means we've got to get through rising the debt ceiling. We need to get voting rights done. I'm sorry, I just keep that one as high as I can on the agenda. We need to get it done, and we need to get it done now. Democracy is hanging by a thread, and that thread is frayed. We have Build Back Better that we are hoping the plan is a vote 2 weeks from today on that in the Senate. We'll see. And then we've got judges we still need to be pushing through. We've got ambassadors. Thank you, Ted Cruz. We have a State Department that is completely decimated right now. And countries around the world where we have no ambassadors. This is nuts. And filling out other positions in the administration. So that's between now and 2.5 weeks from now. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. And the Republicans, I'm just going to be blunt about this, are fighting us every inch of the way. And when I say every inch of the way, I don't mean that like kind of metaphorically. I mean it as in we can't get anything done without having to turn square corners on every rule. And those rules were not meant to be square corners 24/7. So everything, it's like trying to swim through molasses that is cold. And you, I love this metaphor. That just makes everything about this so much harder. So why did we not vote today? We didn't vote today because you can't do, I left it out. And the NDAA is on the floor right now, Defense Authorization Bill, which we'll see if that stays on the floor. So it's just crazy.
Okay, so there's a lot to do. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here again. You mentioned Build Back Better. What's your favorite part of Build Back Better?
2 parts?
Yeah.
Every time somebody says you can have one thing, I say 2. And if they say 3, I say 4. But the 2 things for me right now, it's universal childcare and pre-K, best dollars we can spend to invest in our babies. And particularly when we're talking about with childcare, when we invest in our babies, we're investing in our mamas and daddies so they can go back to work. And we are investing in our childcare workers. This is work that right now is a 30% annual turnover. That's before the pandemic, because it doesn't pay. It doesn't matter that this work is important, and it's not like childcare centers are just keeping all the money for themselves. It doesn't pay because parents can't afford to pay more. In the same way that we don't ask parents to pay for 2nd grade, we make that investment so that our children get a good education. We need to do the same thing, universal childcare. Now, on the other side, it's that we've got a minimum corporate tax. Yes. And let me just say one thing about, 2 things, about why this is, this is kind of a habit, of why this is so important. It's not just an alternative minimum tax. Here's a problem. I'm counting on the fact here at all places that I am in a room full of total policy nerds. Yes. So think about it this way. If you just do an alternative minimum tax, whether it's for corporations or whether it's for individuals, you've stayed in the IRS, which means you've stayed in the 2 relevant committees in Congress, and the lobbyists who have already had a field day in turning our tax laws into Swiss cheese, just keep it up. And so these giant corporations, shoot, easy for them. They pitch a few $1,000,000 to the lobbyists and to their trade reps. They go in and negotiate to get just this tiny little loophole here and that tiny little loophole over there. It all flies below the radar screen. The way this one is set up is it's set up on book income. It is completely, this is like structural change. It is completely outside the IRS purview and those 2 committees, and instead says, under generally accepted accounting principles, whatever you're declaring as your profit publicly is what you have to pay a minimum of 15% tax on. And just to give you an idea, there are 72 companies that we found just digging through their public records that are publicly traded companies that made more than $1 billion with a B in profits and did not pay at least 15% in taxes. So all this huge debate over whether the marginal rate should be 28% or 24% or 32%, Doesn't matter to Amazon, because you know what their marginal rate is? 0. They have already figured out how to play the system like a finely tuned violin. But this one shifts it. And when people say, well, that just means they're going to start playing generally accepted accounting principles, run your brain through that for a minute. Your CEO and your pay is based on how great your company did, how much you could get out there and declare yay on how profitable we are. Are you really sure you want the rules changed so that it looks like your company didn't make any money when it comes time to set your CEO salaries? So I think we're going to be in for some real fun. Go book profits. Yeah, 15%. Something. So those are my 2 things.
So
okay, I promise they won't all be that long on the
No,
answers.
it's fine. I'm used to it.
I know.
I think during the campaign, and especially through your career, a lot of the things that you have talked about have been the theme of this event, which is leveling the playing field. So how do you decide which ones to focus on when there are so many inequitable fields?
Boy, that's a good question. Piercy, you've been part of this for a long time. I think of it this way. It really is a team effort. And I mean that by way of saying, hire people onto the team, bring people onto the team who are entrepreneurial, policy entrepreneurs, people who are always looking for a place that you could move the needle. And sometimes it'll be little tiny, and sometimes it'll be great big. Sometimes it will be move it a little bit, sometimes it'll be move it a lot, sometimes it'll be move it in public by getting out there and hammering on the table, like we did around the tax piece, the minimum corporate profits tax and the wealth tax. Haven't gotten the second one, but got the first one. So I feel like that's part of it is on the reception part, you know, what you get in. And the second part is you just try to do a really hard-boiled analysis of, can we make a difference here? Long-term, short-term, do we really see a way to make a difference? And understand this, you have to be willing to get into fights that you could lose. If you're only going to get into fights that you can win, then that cannot be the test, because we will not make real change under those circumstances. But always stop to evaluate, if you're going to lose this one, is the fight nonetheless worth it? And I mean well worth it. And the answer sometimes is, you bet it is. You want an example of that one? Today, I lost the fight over not getting Jerome Powell renominated to the Fed. I said quite publicly, I didn't think he should be renominated. I was quite clear about my reasons. The Fed has 2 responsibilities: monetary policy and regulatory responsibility, the regulations over the biggest financial institutions. The Fed totally fell down on that in the decade leading up to the 2008 crash, and the consequence of the Fed's failure was to cost millions of people across this country their homes, their jobs, their savings, their pensions. We can't go through that again. And the Fed is the last big backstop for the truly giant financial institutions. And Powell, I think the evidence is just overwhelming. He has just moved every opportunity, just moved a little on the deregulatory side. No big one, just a little. Well, you move a ship a little bit 15 times, and it's always in the same direction. Pretty soon you find you're headed in another direction than you had intended initially. I got into that fight knowing that the odds were good that President Biden would renominate him. But I thought, A, it was an important fight. If I had been here back before the 2008 crash, I would have wanted the chance to have one more chance to stand up and say, this is a bad idea. We need a Fed that is willing to regulate these giant financial institutions. And we live in a world where crypto is growing. I mean, I could just go through the risks that are mounting right now in the system. But secondly, even if I lose, it is important to have this fight. And the reason for that, if I hadn't fought it, he'd have just rolled on through. And everybody would have said, great job. At least now, we got a whole lot of folks, including folks at the Fed, who are saying, maybe we got to pay attention on the regulatory front. Maybe it is time now, yes, to be thinking about climate and risk and what kind of risk that builds into the financial system. Maybe it's time to think about ethics at the Fed and conflicts of interest. And maybe it's time to be thinking about diversity at the Fed. You raise those issues in the fight, even when you lose, you're glad you were in the fight. So that's what it's about for me.
So it's clear that COVID has made, yeah, you can keep that.
I like that. Can I take that?
Yeah, you
okay,
can.
good.
You can keep it, right, guys?
Right.
It's clear that COVID has made a number of existing inequalities worse for Black and brown families. And how do we emerge from whatever phase of COVID we are in and make sure they're not completely left behind?
Yeah. For me, it's Ibram Kendi and anti-racism. It is not enough to write laws and talk policy that so long as you didn't deliberately discriminate against someone overtly and use words that say not that group, then it's okay. The answer is you've got to stop and ask yourself with every one of these policies, what's going on here? And how does this affect, and we have to ask it, how does this affect the communities that have been left behind so often? And I'll give you actually a quick example of that. Ayanna Pressley and I were talking in February, March of 2020. COVID we're just, I guess it would be March. We're just starting to shut down. Ayanna and I are talking to each other. And do you remember at the very beginning how hard it was to find the tests? And yet, entire sports teams could get them and be tested every single day when the rest of the world couldn't get them, even when people were sick and dying. So Ayanna and I are visiting about this and said, mine starts out with, how can you know anything? If you don't have tests for everybody and you're not doing random testing, how do you know anything about the incidence of COVID in the country? But we then started talking about underserved communities. What do you think might be happening in Black and brown communities with just the opportunity to get tested, much less than the incidence of COVID and the ultimate mortality? And so Ayanna and I, we get off this call, and my team goes back and looks, and there are no data. Nobody's collecting data. They're collecting data on age. They're collecting data on race, sex, gender, and they're collecting data on your zip code. And those are the only three pieces of information that are being collected from the tests and reported back into the system. Well, if that's the case, that's all you can fix. And that's all you can start solving for. So Ayanna and I started in on the importance of, we need race data. We want race data. And we just, frankly, made total pains in the rear out of ourselves, which Ayanna's a great partner on that. And sure enough, we introduced legislation, but here's the tools in the toolbox. We introduced legislation, but we also talked about it publicly. We wrote letters, we called people, and we started getting race data into it. And then, of course, we found out what was happening, and that the odds of dying if you were African American were so much higher than if you were white. And so from there, we moved forward. So all of that was, again, a long answer, and I apologize, but that was you ask me how we come out of this. We have got to ask ourselves, each time we're trying to put together policy, each time we're saying we're trying to repair this problem, we have to be deliberate about the questions about race. And we cannot simply make the assumptions, I don't need to think about it. There is no time you don't need to think about it. You've got to stop and ask. And if you don't have good data, then you need to demand good data. That's how we'll make change over time.
That's right. You mentioned the tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think you talked about that a lot on the campaign.
Yeah.
Can you expand what that means, just so everybody's aware? Like, how do you do it? And how do you know what the tools are?
Okay, so like I was a total doof before I was elected to the Senate. I may still be one. But there were things I had just never thought about a Senate job. You go to the Senate, and what do you do when you're in the Senate? You pass legislation. Well, not really. That is a big part. And I think of that as those are the battleship moving moments when you can actually get a piece of federal legislation through. But there is so much more you can do when you sit in the Senate. We have hearings. And those hearings give you a platform. They give you witnesses. They give you the ability to call witnesses in and swear them in. You have the capacity to do oversight, not just the capacity. I think it's part of our job, is to do oversight, to investigate, to write letters, to shake your finger at some of our own government agencies, whether it's your party or their party who's in charge of those agencies. It's to make phone calls and to meet people. Oh, I'll give you one. It's to have dinner. And by that I mean 4 years ago, right about now, 4 years ago, 6 years ago right now, I had dinner with the renegades in tech antitrust. I mean, they were like so far outside the mainstream. This was a moment in Washington when all you could do was just say, big tech, thank you.
Are you saying it's different now?
Little bit. There are still the former worshipers, but I had dinner with them, and they started explaining, wait, this is how you need to understand. This is how, here's Amazon's business model. Let me walk you through this. And this is how Facebook has figured out how to monetize all kinds of things and how that part works and how market dominance works and so on. And all I can say when you talk about tools in the toolbox, one of the people at that dinner, now the head of the FTC, and the other one is the Assistant Attorney General in charge of antitrust in the Department of Justice. Oh, it's going to be fun. Yeah, lots of tools.
Okay, I'm going to draw a few tickets, and then as I'm drawing the tickets, if students can make their way, there's a mic right down in front, and I think one up there and one up there. I'm going to ask the Senator a couple of questions after I draw the tickets.
So you know why we do this. This is exactly how we did it on the campaign.
Every
town hall I did.
Every student lining up right there to ask a question, then we'd be here till midnight.
Well,
right?
no, that's not the reason. The real reason is, this comes from my days in teaching in law school. If you only take volunteers, you hear from the most aggressive, what's the polite word to finish that?
It's Georgetown, Senator.
It's Georgetown.
Yeah, we got it.
Mm-hmm. You know those people. So I never took volunteers in all my years of teaching once I figured this out, because it meant a handful of voices dominate too much. And for me, I want to hear as random a group as we can. You don't have to ask a question if you don't want to, but I want to hear from people who are young and people who are old and people who are in wheelchairs and people who are a little bit shy and people who kind of have to write their questions out in advance. I don't just want to hear from the gunners. And so it makes it, for me, a whole lot more
and I
fun.
also know you want nothing to do with this bucket.
And I never touch it. That's
okay.
right. That's
okay,
right.
So here, I'm going to call 4 numbers at first, and we'll see how far we get. Okay, just the last 3. 770.
770.
Go ahead and yell if you got it.
Let us know you've got one so we know.
744.
744. We got one.
Wait right over there.
We got a winner down
743.
Sitting next to 744.
And
743.
Watch this. 746. So.
You're kidding. Okay, that was Piercy who did that.
I did
Way
that.
to go, Piercy.
Yep, there you go. Okay,
All right.
We all knew that was coming.
Okay.
So I want to ask, while we're waiting for folks to gather, so we're in a room with very motivated students, probably some alum, my friends who are in the 3rd row. And what would you say to them to keep them involved in politics, in government? What's your advice?
This is the moment. I mean, your motivation on a scale of 1 to 10 should be about 4,921. No, and I mean this, because I believe there are times in our history you can just beat your head against the wall and you're going to make very small differences. Doesn't mean it's not important, and you do what you can. And then there are other moments like when the wind is blowing and the storm is coming and it's raining but you've got a chance for a lot of change. And this moment will pass. Things will settle back down one way or another. But this is such a consequential moment, and the direction we end up is multi-generational, what's coming. So I think your motivation ought to be huge. And the second part is, because of this much turmoil, opportunity, we need smart people. You need the policy nerds. You need the people who are willing to get in there and crunch the data if that's what's going on, and go read the pieces and pull the quotes and put the things together. There's a lot of movement right now. And so the answer is, you got to be motivated, because this stuff is hard and people work insane hours sometimes, but the payoff is enormous. Volunteer, jump in, apply for everything, talk to everybody you know. Do not be shy. This is the moment to call everybody you know, network with everybody you know, talk about what you're willing to do. What you bring to it, that you're good at this and excellent at that and super at this part, but also willing to try anything. You'll work on any of the teams, because you get in there and at least around our shop, you show you're good at it, man, the answer is, this is the pie eating contest for which the prize is more pie. But I like that. This is a pie-eating moment, is how I think of this. So
that is very true of the Elizabeth Warren campaign. Okay, we're going to go to questions.
Piercy,
I see, yes, I see down in front. Can you say your name and what year you are?
Yeah, my name is Varsha. I actually graduated from Georgetown undergrad in 2021, so a few months ago. And I'm now a grad student at Georgetown studying international development, originally from Texas.
All right, what part of Texas?
Plano.
Oh, I know Plano.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. Go Texas.
Way to go. Yeah.
I wrote down my questions. So.
Okay.
So one of the most vulnerable groups to COVID-19 has been like the immigrant population in the U.S., both documented and especially undocumented. And as a child of immigrants, I'm really passionate about this issue. I know people who are facing delays in securing visas, processing their citizen documentation, which is already a pain pre-COVID. And with climate change also posing a global crisis, how can we learn from this pandemic to ensure that this specific group of people who are not citizens of the US, or not yet anyways, will still be protected by the US government? Because I feel in many ways the pandemic failed them.
Oh, I think you're right. So let me start by saying, you asked about equality and COVID. One of the lessons we have got to take away from COVID is we are one world. And the idea that somehow we're in different separated boats, and that the people, as long as we take care of ourselves, however you define it, some smaller and smaller group, you'll be insulated from the ravages of a virus, of climate change, of the things that go wrong in this world. It's just fundamentally wrong, and it just smacks us right in the face. So, obviously, we start with just public health and start with CDC. CDC and our whole public health infrastructure needs to be strengthened, and it needs to start with human beings, not questions about citizenship or race. It needs to start with human beings. And that we have to maximize care for, but also education of, just so people know what they need to do in the middle of any kind of crisis, and then whatever help we can do by way of insulation. So that's part of it. A second part of it, though, is to remember that crisis is felt differently depending on the resilience you've got. So yeah, we're all human beings, and yes, we're breathing some mix of oxygen and carbon dioxide. But the difference between having housing and not having housing is a huge health issue, as well as education issue as well, right? But these link up. And we have to think about a health infrastructure that is also about transportation. It is also about housing. It is also about food security. And so if we build out in that direction, it helps us all. And I really will. I'm willing to pitch this one to Democrats and Republicans alike, that your enlightened self-interest is to help everyone around you. And that if I can, I'll make my third pitch, and that is we can't just pretend that our national borders will protect us. I understand the president has now said he's not going to accept flights from certain countries and so on, but we all just kind of roll our eyes, knowing that at best you might delay for a short period of time before this next variant, before Omicron arrives on our shores, but it will come. And so this is why I feel so frustrated about the vaccine production and distribution. Again, you don't even have to be a nice person to want people all around the world to have access to vaccine, to want people all around the world to have strong enough health infrastructures that they can detect the virus early. This is what it will take for all of us to survive. And you can take everything I just said and pick it up and use it on the climate point, and you'll come to exactly the same conclusion. That's why I say this is a moment to be involved in public policy. We get these parts right, we not only survive, we come out better and stronger. We get these parts wrong, we don't survive this. So, thank you. It's a good question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elena.
Hi, Elena.
Hi, I am an EMPL student, so I'm studying in the master's program for the policy leadership.
Uh-huh.
And my question is involving tax policy because...
Oh, I love it.
So,
oh, you're such a nerd.
I definitely am. So I'm the taxpayer advocate for the District of Columbia's Office of Tax and Revenue.
Uh-huh.
And my question for you is how you think that we can reimagine our tax policy or our tax system as a whole in order to make it more equitable, in addition to the proposal that you've already mentioned about the minimum tax for corporations.
Elena, she wants to adopt you. You realize that, right?
I do. I'm taking you home with me tonight. Okay, are you guys ready? It's time for a wealth tax in America. So this is what is so wrong with our tax system overall. We tax income, and we think that we can understand progressive taxation, making those who have more pay more in order to make it, to build a more equitable country, and a country where we just have enough money to make the investments in our future. No, it's not going to get us there. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to, if I had my slides, I do that. Instead, I will just dance them. Think about the difference between income, just start at zero, lowest income Americans and highest income Americans. What does that chart look like? And the answer is, it looks kind of like this. And it starts up and it starts up, and then it goes up like that. It's pretty shocking between here and here, right? Do you know what it looks like on wealth? It goes nothing, 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 nothing. Now it starts to climb a little bit, and then it goes all the way up and through the roof. The inequality on wealth is extraordinary, and it has started creating perversions in our system. There's just no other way to describe it. Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Jeff Bezos, right? Described as richest man in America, one of the richest men in America, one of the richest 5, or however they count this stuff. Do you know how much he made in income last year? Anybody ready? $83,000. Less than a Boston public school teacher. How does he manage to finance his little, jet skis in space or whatever it is he goes off and does, right? How does he manage to finance it? He has this ginormous wealth, right, and Amazon that he owns. He borrows against his Amazon stock, lives this fantastic Life never sells a share of stock, has $83,000 in income, therefore pays virtually nothing in taxes. And with any luck, thank you tax code, his heirs will then pick up that Amazon stock at a stepped up basis, and they will not have to pay taxes on it. They will be able to sell it for the value it is on the day that Jeff Bezos dies. That is obscene. That is disgusting. And what it does is it creates a class in America that continues to just rake value out of the rest of the economy, amass this enormous pile of money, and remember the part, it's not just money, it's influence that comes with it. It's to be able to have a voice in Washington that is louder than the voices of tens of millions of Americans. All of that because the tax code is structured on this simplistic notion that if we just tax income, we'll get to where we need to go. So, short version of this, I want to do a 2-cent tax on fortunes above $50 million. 2 cents, and it's on everything you own. It's on your car and your house and all of it. And it's wherever it's held, whether it's held here in the United States or somewhere else. And it's basically like property tax on a home. You pay a property tax every year. There's just property tax for rich people on the other stuff they own. The diamonds, the stock, the Rembrandts, the yachts, the yacht for the yacht, whatever it is they've got. And people say, oh, but it'd be so hard to value, for which I say, oh, boo-hoo, let me try. About 60% of this wealth is held in stock. I know how to value that. The rest of it is insured, and it's used as collateral for loans. That means there's valuation already on it. And frankly, you can let them go on the little stuff. Anything under, say, $50,000 in household goods, fine, keep it. We don't have to value it. But the point is, just that would produce about $3 trillion over 10 years. And that one would have paid all by itself for universal child care, universal pre-K, raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America, would have let us quadrupled the money that goes into Title I schools, would have let us, for the first time ever in our history, fully fund IDEA so that children with disabilities would have full funding and the full promise of the education promises we made to them decades ago, would let us put, in addition to that, an extra $1 million in every single public school in America. It would also permit us to cancel $50,000 of student loan debt. It would permit us to make a $50 billion investment into historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions. It would let us, I'm trying to remember what else you can do with that. But you get the idea that $3 trillion over 10 years, and we could make an investment effectively in everybody under 25. We could give them a real boost, just that one bit. And that's what we need to do. We need to change tax law in America so that it focuses on those at the very top and says we are going to invest across the board in developing opportunities for all of the young people in this nation. That's what I think we should be doing. So, thank you. I love that question.
Hi, Senator Warren.
Hi.
Thank you for coming to Georgetown.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
I'm a freshman in the college, undecided, undeclared. Yeah, so suggestions.
You want to come to office hours tomorrow?
But
Piercy will take care of that.
Yeah, office hours tomorrow.
We'll get you in.
Yeah, and on the subject of leveling the playing field, The recent redistricting after the 2020 census advantages certain parties and certain groups of people, but generally...
Oh, that was put diplomatically.
Yes, and, but it generally disadvantages minority communities.
Yep.
And my question was, what role does government policy come into play in mitigating the risk of state legislators moving minorities from the conversation? Like conversation about policy on COVID, which disproportionately affects minority groups, or on housing or education. Role does government need to play to address this disparity that's coming into play?
One of the responsibilities of government is to protect our democracy. And the way we protect our democracy is we protect access to the vote. And that means every American citizen gets a right to vote and a right to get that vote counted, and that we do not gerrymander their voices out of existence. That's what it should be about. The Republicans have pushed this to the breaking point. This is staggering. There's always been a little back and forth, but I hope you all are watching this now. You know, Wisconsin, this notion that if the Republican state legislature doesn't like the outcome of the election, they should decide who won the election, not counting the ballots at the ballot box. 150 different ways now that we've watched states around the country see to it that it's harder in communities of color to vote, that votes are less likely to be counted, that, I mean, just on and on. It's just multiplier effect. It's like as soon as one, and I'm just, because this is just factual, one Republican-led state legislature says they got their crazy on, another one says we can be crazier than that. And they're building off each other on these ways. We now have a political party in America, one of the two major political parties, who says quite openly that the only way that they can win is to keep some American citizens from voting. That is the state of our democracy, and right now, they're not just whispering that behind closed doors. They're saying it openly, and they are trying to move legislation through the state legislatures in order to accomplish that. We not only have the right at the federal level to put a stop to that, we have a responsibility to put a stop to that. And that's what we need to do right now. We have that bill pending right now in the Senate. We have all 50 Democrats signed off on the content of the bill. The need couldn't be stronger. The bill is good. It is a good, solid bill. And by the way, the particular one you raised, it specifically rolls back gerrymandering and says we're done with gerrymandering. Neither party, nobody gets to gerrymander. There are other ways we have to draw districts. But right now we are stymied over the question of the filibuster, because the Republicans have made clear they will not give us a single vote, even to move to debate on the bill, much less give us the 10 votes it would take in a 50-50 Senate to be able to break a filibuster and get to the floor and then be able to vote on it at the other end. So that's where it is right now. This is why I said our democracy hangs by a thread that is rapidly fraying. We are running out of time. And the filibuster is choking our access to making our democracy work. And it's time to get rid of it. So.
Zach, do we have one upstairs? No? Okay, I'm gonna call some more and maybe they won't be from the first row.
People in the first row are happy with that.
I mean, they're having a great day. Okay, 782.
Do we have a 782?
You guys
All
can
right.
woo when you get it. Come on over. We're gonna go over 748. Oh, you guys are sitting next to each other too. Jesus Christ. 772 and 760. While you're all getting there, I'm gonna take a little page from our friends at Fly on the Wall, the podcast here, and ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite senator not from Massachusetts?
All of them. I love Sheldon Whitehouse. I really do. The guy is like totally into climate, total nerd, but also into the influence of dark money and the risks associated with dark money. He's terrific. Jeff Merkley.
You're only naming people that didn't run against you for president. You realize this, right?
It's a short list. I know. Yes, but yes, that is true.
Okay, we'll go. We've got a question here.
Tina Smith, she's good. I like Tina.
Also,
Hi, my name is Nina.
Hi, Nina.
I'm a freshman in the School of Foreign Service.
Uh-huh.
I have a question for you about education policy.
Okay.
So oftentimes in America, policies disproportionately affect minorities, and education policy, it's a well-known fact that it's no different. I know that you have a great education, great public school for every student act. I mean, you spoke about IDEA a couple questions earlier. My question to you is that on the topic of leveling the playing field, not only domestically, but for foreign policy as well, what is a real solution that can be bipartisan, supported through both parties, where we can level the playing field for equal educational opportunities for students in developing countries as well as developed countries like the US?
You know, I appreciate the question, but you need a Republican in here to answer that. And no, I'm serious. I'm not sure they want to pay taxes in order to help children in foreign countries get an education. I don't hear a lot of appetite for that. And so I can think of a lot of ways to design the program and would be glad to do so. And in fact, have worked on some. But an occasional one-off, I will readily admit that. But show me 10 Republicans in the United States Senate who are willing to say that they will take US tax dollars, their own tax dollars, I'm sorry, their donors' tax dollars, and spend them like that. And so, I know, and you can all just say, God, I can't believe how partisan she is, but this is the world I now live in. And this really frustrates me, because when you start a question with, what can we do on a bipartisan basis? How about what can we do on a bipartisan basis to get rid of the filibuster? Because there's nobody out there on the other side to help on this. There's nobody home. Did you watch them negotiate for how many months to do that bipartisan infrastructure bill? And do you remember what the hang-up was? As I understand it, the United States Congress has been doing infrastructure. Memory of man runneth not to the contrary. I mean, that was like, everybody needs roads, right? They all love roads, right? Roads, things you can name after senators. You know, it just, but not now. Not now. They could only do a nearly $1 trillion infrastructure bill if you could find some crazy way to do it without taxing people to do it, right? They had to do a bunch of accounting tricks to make it work and a thing, and then come up short and do the numbers, because the one ironclad rule going into this was you can't use taxes to pay for it. That is just not part of now the conversation. And so I say this not by way of, I'm trying to give you a hard time. I'm just saying, I don't know how you have a conversation on public policy things that need to be done if you can't get people into the room who recognize, yes, we do need to pay for them. I actually do believe that. I think we ought to pay for the things that we're doing, and I want to pay for the things. I regard paying for the things you want to do as not only a discipline, but actually a benefit. I think the world would be a better place with a wealth tax, because I believe, you know, we've made this decision over and over in America. Do we want to be a country that has an economic royalty that passes down to its children the insulation from the need to work in America, the need to strive, the need to build, the opportunity to work and to strive and to build? And we've said time after time after time, no, that's not the country we want to be. It's why we wouldn't call George Washington a king. It's why we put limits that a president can only serve 2 consecutive terms. We said that's not the country we want to be. It's why, for any of you who are in law school, we have a rule against perpetuities. I know. But it's the whole idea is building a separate group we believe does not work. And if you're not bought into that, you have such a different vision of America. The gulf gets so wide. And I don't say that as a matter of pleasure. I say it because it breaks my heart to see that. If we can't find that space to start to bring it together so that we can talk about educating children around the world, then we've lost something that I think was part of our aspiration to be a great nation. And so I say to you, I wish it were otherwise. But I don't know where the partner is to start that conversation right now. I wish I had a better answer.
We're gonna take this downstairs one, and then I see one upstairs.
Hi, Senator. I want to echo the sentiments of the people who asked questions before me, and thank you for being here. Obviously, you have a very busy schedule. My name is Phoebe. I'm a freshman in the college, hoping to major in government. I grew up 30 minutes away from campus. And my question to you is, well, obviously, I loved hearing all that really nice political advice that you gave us at the beginning. But obviously, you can't listen to everything. So in terms of flipping the script, what's the worst political advice you've ever been given?
Not from your political director.
Oh, definitely not. That was always great advice. You know, I think the worst advice I got was before I ever got in to politics. Remember, this was not my life. I am not like you all. I didn't know I was a nerd early on. I was not a government major. I was not into public policy. I was a law nerd and a bankruptcy and commercial law and economics and how all the pieces work and so on. And when I came down I had this idea for this consumer agency. President Obama asked me to come down and set it up. I was pre-rejected to run the agency. That is, the Republicans sent over a letter to the president and said, if you nominate that woman, we will reject her. So I think I may have been the first person in history to be pre-rejected. I hadn't been nominated. Couldn't you at least wait? But the answer was no. No, they were so ready. It was led by the folks on the banking committee. I just want you all to know I now sit on the banking committee. I walk in every day and say good morning. But it was when I was told that, you should run for Senate from Massachusetts. I never run for public office. You'll lose because Massachusetts is not going to elect a woman. This is less than 10 years ago. In fact, it's 10 years ago right now.
Yeah.
10 years ago right now when I was making the decision about whether or not to run. And the advice I got was run recognizing that you will lose. And when you do run, don't say anything that people would actually recognize that you are a woman. And I was like, I don't think anybody's going to be fooled about this. But it was, don't talk about things like childcare. Don't talk about education. There was like a whole list of things. You remember this.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really lousy advice. So I'll do the inverse, because I'm doing a bad job on this question. I'll do the inverse. And that is, on everything you do, whether you run for office, whether you run somebody else's campaign, whether you come in as a policy person, bring everything you are into it. And that means where you came from. you don't try to fool anybody about any part of it, because at the end of the day, you need your feet well planted. You know who you are, you know what you fight for, you know what you care about. That's how you're going to make it through in this. I love what I do. I hate it, but I also love it. And I love it in part because it comes from so deep in my heart, and I get to spend time with people like Rebecca, who fight from the heart. Everybody on my team, we all do it from someplace deep inside. And the best I can say is, if you do that, you will live a life of meaning. And that's the best you can hope for.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can see them. Oh, yep, there we go. Right up there.
Hello, Senator Warren. Can you
Hello.
see me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. I think you sneaked up behind me. Yeah. Tell me your name.
My name is Pratik.
Hi.
I'm from southern New Jersey, in a rural town within like a Union County. For the past over a year, I worked for Senate President Sweeney in the New Jersey Senate, and I spoke a lot with a lot of constituents. And one thing I heard was it was a lot of former Democrats who, starting in 2016 and throughout now, have sort of felt abandoned by the Democratic Party, who feel that there's a lot of people in the party who are sort of, to use their term, woke liberals, who don't really understand what their life is like, and they just don't feel empowered, or they feel left behind by the Democratic Party. My two-parter, like, one, do you feel like their concerns have merit, and what can the Democratic Party do to bring those former Democrats back into the fold?
Look, if they say that what Democrats are doing does not speak to them, then that's just true. I mean, that's just evidence. It clearly didn't. I think the question is, why not? Why didn't they rise with one voice and say, wealth tax, pass around the pitchforks and torches, you know? What is it about Democrats that caused people, hardworking people, decent people, to say, not for me? Could be racism. I don't think so, but it could be. It could be, though, that we aren't clear about what we fight for. Or we do a lot of policy stuff because we love the policy stuff, but we never indicate that we are willing to fight. And I think that makes a lot of people feel like, well, what the hell? This is not a debating society. I'm not inviting you to go to Washington to talk to a bunch of people and talk to each other and strut around. I want you to actually get some stuff done. And that maybe we haven't done enough of that. I don't know. I don't know, because obviously I don't know this set of people. But I will tell you this. I think what we are doing or trying to do is right. And when people want to say, oh, too woke for me, my answer is, yeah, right. Racism is alive and well in this country. And I believe that puts on every one of us a responsibility to stand up and speak out. And if there are people who don't like it, it's just too damn bad. And yeah, not everybody likes every fight that we get into. But the truth is, we're at least out there trying. And we may not get it right every time. Not all of my colleagues certainly do. There's nobody in the Senate that I agree with 100% of the time, including myself, probably. But I think we are trying to move this in the right direction, and we are trying to do it in a way that is inclusive. We are trying to do it in a way that is thoughtful. We're trying to do it in a way where you get it wrong and you have to admit it, and you got to back up and try to do it again. And I want us to be an inclusive party. I want us to be an inclusive Congress, both parties. I want us to be an inclusive nation. And that's going to have some bumpy parts to it. It's going to have some in the middle of it. People with privilege don't like giving up privilege. Hello? People, billionaires, newsflash, do not want to give up any of their money. They got so much money, and you keep thinking, if you've got that much, surely you'd be willing to give up some. Nope. Nope, nope. Leon Cooperman went on TV and cried about it, right? A cup of billionaire tears, nothing so sweet. But I say this, change is hard, and I understand that. I would like everybody to acknowledge that and make it easy. It's not going to happen. The question is, when people tell you this is hard, then I try to do two things at once. One is, tell me what matters to you. Help me understand it. What is the part that worries you? What is it we can talk about that I can learn from here? Are you worried about health insurance? Are you worried about educating your children? Are you worried about still having a job a year from now? Are you worried about whether or not you'll ever be able to retire? Talk to me about these things. These are things I care about too. Let me understand them and let us work together on those things. But the second part is to say, you're not going to back me off from what I think is right. And you're not going to back me off from acknowledging the problems we have as a nation. Because if we don't acknowledge them, we can't fix them. We talk about the things that are broken because we love this country. We talk about the things that are broken because we believe that we can do better. We talk about the things that are broken because we are ultimately optimistic. We are not about trying to preserve whatever we've got. We're about trying to build more for everyone. For me, that's what this whole game is about.
Hey, Zach, is there one more? Okay. That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
That's
so
it?
Can I ask you one last thing?
Sure.
So, we did the selfie lines on these campaigns. They were crazy. They were long. But I was always impressed by your memory of them and your cities. So can you tell us just a couple of your favorite selfie line stories?
Okay, so a couple. There was the pinky promises. Some of you may know about pinky promises little girls, pinky promises little boys, pinky promises with daddies and with grandmas. There was the pinky promise in Iowa with the pug dog. Do you remember? It was like 185 degrees outside, and this dog is going, little short-snouted, you know the kind of dog. And the couple is going to say, oh, he wants to do a pinky promise. This dog is like slobbering down my arm. I remember that one. A couple from the selfie line. In Nevada, there was a fellow who came up to me, probably in his 50s, then kind of looked like he lived kind of a tough life. And he said he was diabetic. And he said, I need to talk to you about insulin. And I'm all ready to wind up on it. And he said, no, he said, I'm a vet. And he said, I'm okay. He said, because the VA gives me insulin. And he said, but my sister is also diabetic, and her daughter is diabetic, and they don't have health insurance. And he said, so when it gets toward the end of the month, and they don't have insulin, the three of them stay close together, and whoever looks like they're about to pass out gets the remaining insulin. He shares his insulin 3 ways. Can you imagine? I just think about that man's life and his sister and her daughter. And it stuck with me, the vividness of, we talk about healthcare in America, but to have to live it day after day after day, that you've got to stay close because 3 of us are trying to live off one person's dose of insulin in this, the richest country in the history of the world. on a drug that was invented 100 years ago, and we can't make it available to the people in this country who are diabetic? What is wrong with us? And then in Indiana, we went to 30 states and Puerto Rico. We didn't just do the kind of the big four that you're supposed to do when you run for president in the primaries. We went to all kinds of places, and we did a great event. We talked about industrial policy and the need for the United States to develop industrial policy. We don't really have industrial policy in the US. It's a great town hall, wonderful event. It was at the RV Museum. And this woman comes up on stage with this little girl, I don't know, maybe 9, 10 years old. She is ready for her pinky promise. She has, man, sometimes these kids get wound, you know, before they come up. And she is ready, and she comes up, and she's got her sparkles, and she's ready to go. And we do our pinky promise, and she's smiling, and she tells me how she's gonna remember this is what girls do. Girls run for president, girls win. And she does the pinky promise, and she bounds off this kind of low stage we're on. And her mother's smiling, and she puts her arms around me, and she leans over. I said, what a doll. And she said, yeah, she has brain cancer. And she said, please remember all the children who need health care. Please remember all of us who are out there fighting these fights every day with insurance companies. Please remember how much we need a government that is on our side. Doing a selfie line was great fun, but it would be a smile and a laugh, and another one, and then another one. And then there were times you'd just be right in the middle of it, and it was like a spear right between the ribs and straight to your heart. Because it was the on-the-ground reminder that even for us policy nerds, that what underlies every part of this is people who work so hard and who need a government on their side. That's why I'm here. That's why I hope you're here. Because people really do need us. Thank you.